Some aches become identities. A child loses something sacred, a father, a sense of safety, a vision of justice. The pain enters the psyche before language fully forms around it. Years pass. The child grows taller. The voice deepens. The body hardens. Yet the scar remains untouched beneath the surface, like a blade sealed inside the ribs. The Princess Bride carries this hidden truth beneath its charm and humor. The story appears playful on the surface. Sword fights, giants, masks, romance. Yet one presence inside the film moves through a far darker current. Inigo Montoya walks through the story like a ghost shaped by memory. Every movement in his life bends around a single moment. Every choice flows toward a single reckoning. He speaks the same words over and over until they become prayer, ritual, and psychological imprisonment. Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. The sentence becomes his entire horizon. Grief does this when it remains unresolved. The trauma hardens into structure. Pain becomes purpose. Inigo believes he hunts revenge. The deeper reality reveals something else. He hunts the missing parts of himself. He carries the physical proof of this severance on his face. The 2 marks on his cheeks are more than remnants of a blade. They are the externalized branding of a broken spirit. When Count Rugen spared the boy, he did something far more cruel than murder. He turned the child into a monument to his own tragedy. Inigo's face serves as a map of the very moment his childhood ended. He sees the perpetrator's signature. He is a living artifact of Rugen's sadism. Inigo enters the story already divided within himself. His father, Domingo, created beauty. He was a master swordsmith whose work carried devotion and artistry within every detail. The 6-fingered sword represented more than craftsmanship. It represented inheritance, meaning, legacy passed from one essence into another. Then Count Rugen shattered that world. The murder happened during Inigo's youth, during the fragile years when a child first learns what power means. Unlike many stories of witness, Inigo was a participant. He challenged the monster. He stood his ground with the small strength of a child. Rugen disarmed him and marked him, leaving the boy alive to carry the burden of failure. The trauma froze him in place internally, even as time continued externally. The child who witnessed helplessness remained alive beneath the adult swordsman. From that moment forward, Inigo devoted his life to mastery. Every duel became preparation. Every lesson sharpened the singular obsession guiding his existence. He became legendary with the blade. He reached the rank of wizard, a level of skill that should have brought peace. Yet greatness failed to heal him. Skill gave him precision. Precision gave him control. Control gave him temporary relief from the deeper chaos inside. Years later, he drifts through Florin alongside Vizzini and Psyche. The trio functions like fragmented aspects of one haunted consciousness. Vizzini represents intellect severed from wisdom. He is the cold, calculating ego that sees people as tools. He found Inigo when he was a hopeless drunk and bound him to a new master. Psyche carries innocence and emotional loyalty. He is the heart that refuses to harden. Inigo stands between them as the broken warrior seeking meaning through violence. Then Wesley enters the path. Their duel atop the cliffs of insanity carries unusual energy because neither man fights from hatred. The encounter becomes a sacred ritual. They are two men recognizing dignity within each other through combat. Inigo awakens briefly during this moment. Presence returns. The deadness lifts from his spirit for a few precious minutes. He finds a mirror in Wesley that reflects his potential. Inigo embodies the shadow-seeking integration. Jung understood that the shadow contains rejected aspects of the self: rage, grief, fear, humiliation, unexpressed pain. The mind buries these forces beneath conscious awareness because they threaten stability. Yet whatever remains buried gains power in darkness. Inigo's entire personality forms around unresolved trauma. His definition of self depends upon revenge because revenge gives shape to suffering. Without the quest, he fears emptiness. Without the scar, he no longer knows who he is. Count Rugen functions as more than a villain. He represents the externalized face of Inigo's inner torment: coldness, sadism, emotional detachment, power without soul. Rugen murders beauty without remorse. He destroys the sacred bond between father and son, then continues life untouched internally. He is the six-fingered man. This physical anomaly is a crucial symbolic detail. In the world of the film, the six fingers represent a deviation from the natural order. For Inigo, Rugen is the glitch in the universe that must be corrected for the world to make sense again. This creates a poisonous imbalance between victim and perpetrator. One soul remains haunted, while the other moves freely through the world. The interior cannot tolerate this fissure forever. So the shadow begins hunting. Inigo's repetition of his famous phrase reveals ritualistic fixation. The sentence behaves like an incantation repeated across decades. Trauma survivors often do this internally. The mind circles the same psychic territory, endlessly searching for resolution. The ache speaks through loops. The shadow seeks a final meeting. Wesley carries another archetypal force entirely. He represents integrated masculine presence: calm, skilled, anchored, alive. During their duel, Wesley recognizes Inigo's deeper nature beneath the obsession. Respect passes between them because Wesley sees the humanity still trapped inside the warrior. Psyche also serves an important symbolic role. He represents the loyal heart that remains connected to feeling. His friendship keeps Inigo tethered to humanity, while revenge slowly consumes the rest of him. Without Psyche, Inigo likely disappears completely into hatred. The inner life always requires some remaining thread connected to love. The descent arrives after the death of Vizzini and the capture of Wesley. Inigo collapses inward once the external mission loses momentum. Alcohol floods into the empty spaces inside him. His body survives while his spirit drifts through numbness and exhaustion. The revenge fantasy sustained him for years. Without movement toward the goal, despair rises from beneath the surface. Many wounded souls organize their lives around future resolution. One reckoning, one achievement, one final victory. They believe healing waits somewhere ahead. Yet beneath that fantasy sits terror. What happens after? Who am I without the wound? Inigo reaches this threshold in the forest. His suffering no longer burns with intensity. It decays into emptiness. The soul grows tired, carrying unresolved pain across decades. He is a wizard with no spell to cast. Then Psyche finds him. This friendship matters deeply here because genuine connection interrupts isolation. Psyche does not judge the drunken state. He simply cares for the man. He calls Inigo back toward purpose, back toward movement, back toward life itself. The loyal friend becomes a guide pulling the broken soul through darkness. They realize they need the man in black to succeed. This creates a profound symbolic union. Wesley is mostly dead. Inigo is spiritually dead. Together, they represent a fragmented whole trying to storm the gates of power. They visit Miracle Max, a figure who represents the quirky, unpredictable nature of grace. Through this intervention, the mostly dead Wesley is revived. The three of them pursue Prince Humperdinck's castle. Inside waits Count Rugen. The collision unfolds like a ritual descent into the underworld. Hallways narrow, torches flicker. The architecture feels dreamlike and symbolic. Inigo bleeds heavily during the duel because true engagement with the shadow always carries sacrifice. Rugen wounds him physically while mocking him psychologically. He stabs Inigo in the stomach, a blow that should be fatal. The old helplessness threatens to return. The terrified child inside Inigo awakens again. He is staring at the man who has haunted his dreams for 20 years. Then something changes. Inigo stops running from the pain. He steps toward it. The famous line transforms in this moment. Earlier repetitions carried obsession and rage. Now the words carry reclamation. Presence enters his voice. Strength enters his body. Something fragmented begins gathering itself together. This time he fully means it. He says it while bleeding out beneath the weight of 20 years. The deeper spiritual layer of the film reveals revenge as a false promise of salvation. The ego believes external justice will restore inner wholeness. The haunted mind imagines one decisive act capable of erasing grief permanently. Yet suffering rarely disappears through violence. Pain transferred outward continues existing inwardly. Count Rugen resembles an archonic force within the wounded self. He drains vitality from others without conscience. He studies suffering clinically through torture machines and experimentation. He represents consciousness severed from empathy. He is mechanical intellect detached from soul. This matters because trauma often creates inner fragmentation, where parts of the self begin mirroring the cruelty that caused the original scar. Hatred reproduces itself internally. Inigo risks becoming psychologically identical to the man he hunts. When Rugen offers money and power to save his own life, he is trying to tempt Inigo into becoming like him. He is offering the ego everything it thinks it wants. Inigo rejects the offer. "I want my father back, you son of a bitch." The duel therefore becomes a spiritual initiation. When Inigo finally kills Rugen, the audience expects triumph. Instead, the moment feels strangely hollow. Quiet enters the space afterward. The obsession that structured his existence suddenly dissolves. Then comes the revelation. I've been in the revenge business so long. Now that it's over, I don't know what to do with the rest of my life. The line lands with enormous weight because the ego survives through identification. Inigo organized his entire existence around woundedness. Revenge gave him direction. The pain gave him meaning. The shadow consumed the rest of his identity until almost nothing remained outside it. Now the reckoning has ended. The trauma no longer defines the path ahead. For the first time since childhood, Inigo stands before the terrifying possibility of becoming whole. The ego fears this moment more than suffering itself. Wholeness requires rebirth. It requires the courage to exist without the armor of a grudge. Every soul carries some version of Inigo Montoya within it. A betrayal, a humiliation, an abandonment. Some moment where innocence fractured and the psyche built defenses around the scar afterward. Many people spend years constructing identities around pain without realizing it. The wounded child becomes the angry adult. The rejected soul becomes emotionally unreachable. The abandoned heart becomes obsessed with control. The betrayed spirit learns to trust nobody. The ego adapts brilliantly to suffering. Then the adaptation becomes a prison. Inigo reveals the danger of allowing trauma to become destiny. His skill impresses the world. His confidence appears powerful. Yet inwardly, he remains frozen around a single unresolved grief. The film invites the viewer into uncomfortable self-recognition. What pain still shapes your identity? What ache still organizes your decisions? What old sentence still echoes inside you? Healing begins when the self stops worshipping the wound as a sacred mantle. Integration requires facing suffering honestly, without allowing it to consume the future completely. This does not mean forgetting pain. It means carrying pain consciously rather than building a throne for it inside the soul. Inigo survives because some essential humanity remains alive beneath the rage. Friendship preserves him. Honor preserves him. Beauty preserves him. Even during his darkest moments, he never fully abandons the deeper values inherited from his father. He was a swordsmith's son. Part of him still served beauty instead of cruelty. That inheritance saves him. The soul returns in fragments before it returns whole. When the story ends, Wesley offers Inigo the chance to become the next dread pirate Roberts. This is the ultimate symbol of transformation. He is invited to step into a new mask, a new role, and a new life. He is no longer the seeker of revenge. He is a leader of men. Some people spend their entire lives hunting ghosts, old betrayals, old humiliations, old scars that continue echoing through the chambers of memory long after the original moment has passed. Time moves forward externally while the spirit remains trapped beside the fissure. Inigo walks through that prison for years, sword in hand, rage in heart, memory burning endlessly beneath the surface. Yet the story reveals something ancient about the human soul. The ache cannot become the final identity. At some point, the will must choose between endless repetition and transformation. The shadow must be faced directly. The grief must speak its true name. The child frozen inside the trauma must finally return to life. Inigo defeats the man who murdered his father. Then he confronts the deeper mystery afterward. Who am I now? That question marks the true beginning of the journey. The old self collapses there. A new path opens quietly in the distance. The soul steps forward uncertain yet alive once again. The scars remain upon his face, yet they no longer belong to the frightened child kneeling beside his father's corpse. They belong to the man who walked into the underworld and returned carrying his own name again. Keep wandering, keep questioning, and keep feeding the flame of your inner world.